Okay, good morning. Yeah, we're gonna do this. My hair is absolutely insane, but you know what? You gotta do what you gotta do. Let me just figure out real quick. Good morning, hello, and welcome to Kai Chi Alchemy. You can call me Katchi. This is a space of love, y'all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the cosmos. I hope that you are doing well today. Again, may have my puppy make a guest appearance. We'll see what happens here. I think before I even start today, I'm going to light this very cool Palo Santo rolled in rose, I believe. Coolest thing I've ever seen. Okay, so today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I've been talking for a while about wanting to begin the readings of the Ringing Cedars of Russia series again. And I'm gonna start right from the beginning. And the reason that I'm doing this is because, for one, the Ringing Cedars of Russia is a very big reason why I have developed such a strong relationship with my imagination and my intuition and everything that has, led me here today. And it's also very tied in with the vision that led me to start this channel, really in order to assist in creating more minds out there, to expand the image I nation, to expand the groups of people who are willing and able to co-create their own reality from their heart and from their mind and from their desires and their love, as opposed to creating unconsciously from fear and greed and all of that. Probably gonna turn on that fan there, just get the circulation going. But without too much further ado, I'm just gonna get straight into it. I'm just gonna be reading the preface today, so just kind of a little introduction. I'm not gonna give you the whole entire backstory of the relationship that these books have to my life, because that could be an entire video or series on its own. But I appreciate y'all for being here today. I think I'm gonna pull a card or two to open the space. Also, I'm going to ring the sound bowl right here. So if you have any kind of sound sensitivities, I would recommend that you take out your earbuds or turn down your volume, what have you. What are we feeling today? Let's do animals. I still have the oyster, the stingray, and the raccoon out from the last reading that we did for the 3 piles. Those, like growing a pearl in your heart, like a kundalini activation, like some shadow work. If you feel called to that reading, that may be some kind of confirmation or insight for you. Holy Child, Holy Spirit, Holy Father, Holy Mother, please be here with me now. Please allow me to see. Please allow me to channel for the collective the messages in alignment with their greatest and highest good. Allow my mind to be a clear channel. Ooh, gosh. Can I please have a animal spirit for the opening of the Ringing Cedars of Russia series readings, book 1, Anastasia. I have 2 that came out. We got the fox and the snake. Ooh, that's pretty. I should make sure y'all can see it. All right. Any downloads you might get from the images, straight from the cards, I'll let you leave that there. But they're both earth, so that's fun. That seems appropriate. The snake, giving me like Ouroboros. The fox is like kind of sneaky, but like in a good way. You know when somebody winks at you and it's like in a good, mischievous way? That's what I'm getting off of him. Okay. So, let me just start off. This is one of the older editions. Not necessarily my favorite, like energetically for some reasons, but I mean, the art is very cool on the front. Right now, my friend Miguel is working with Vladimir Magray and some other people to publish the English version of the Ringing Cedars of Russia in America again. So that should be happening quite soon. I haven't been keeping up with it lately, but worth looking into if you're curious about getting your own books, because there was a period of time where it was basically impossible to find them. You could get them on eBay for like $300 or something. It was just a supply and demand thing. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So we'll get into that some other day. But this is the very first book in the series, and I guess a family friend gifted this book to me, and I don't think that she read the rest of the books, and I don't feel that it particularly resonated with her in the way that it resonates with most people, but she was just kind of a bridge for me. And I think I was like 12 years old, and it kind of reminds me of when my mom bought me the Twilight book, and I was like, and I read it, and then I went out and got all the rest of them like the next day or something. And I'm very grateful for that bridge. That's all I'll say on that. So we're gonna read the translator's preface today. It's about 8 pages. We'll see how long it goes. I'm gonna have everybody do a brief 1 breath meditation before we get started. And also, in the books, there's always like a kind of disclaimer warning thing about how it's really best and ideal, if possible, to listen to the words of these books in circumstances where you have more exposure to nature and natural rhythms and sounds, and less artificial noises and lights and stuff. So if you have the ability to listen to these chapters while you are in nature, it would be an amazing boost and benefit and add-on. But don't ever feel like that's necessary. We live in a quantum universe. Like, you just bring in the nature if you need to. So before we start, I'm gonna have you put your hand on your heart, your hand on your belly, take a deep breath, and hold it at the top for a moment, or however long you're comfortable. Bringing in those natural frequencies as needed. Translator's preface. When I opened my online Slavic languages bulletin one day in early September 2004 and learned about a book in the Ringing Cedars series that was seeking a translator into English, little did I realize the kind of literary adventure that was awaiting me. But as I became acquainted with the details of Vladimir Magray's fascinating work, I read through the first 3 books in the series before beginning the actual translation. It gradually dawned on me that much of my previous translation experience, especially in poetry, from Pushkin to Anna Akhmatova to modern bards and poetic prose, as with the stories of contemporary Russian writer Mikhail Sadovsky, not to mention my own religious background, emphasizing man's unique status as the image and likeness of the Creator, had been preparing me specifically for this particular task. Magre's work was simply the next logical step, it seemed, in the progression of my career. Indeed, I found myself taking to it not only with the enthusiasm that comes with the prospect of facing a new professional challenge, but even more with the thought of feeling very much at home in this new literary environment. Some of my friends and colleagues had asked, "What kind of book are you translating?" No doubt wondering whether they could look forward to reading a novel, a documentary account, an inspirational I never know how to pronounce that word. On the meaning of life, or even a volume of poetry. But even after completing the translation of Anastasia, I still do not have a definitive answer to give them. In fact, I am still asking myself the same question. My initial response was a rather crude summary of a gut impression. I would tell them, think Star Trek meets the Bible. My feelings about the book, however, go far beyond this primitive attempt at jocularity. Of the 4 disparate genres mentioned above, I would have to say Anastasia has elements of all 4 and then some. First, the book reads like a novel. That is to say, it tells a first-person story in a most entertaining way, bringing out the multifaceted character of both the author and the title personage in a manner not unlike what readers of novels might expect. It tells a tale of adventure in the raw Siberian wilds, where even sex and violence make an occasional appearance, though with a connection to the plot line quite unlike their counterparts in any work of fiction I have read. Secondly, the book gives the impression of a documentary account of real-life events, even if one's powers of belief are sometimes stretched to the limit. I am glad that my linguistic experience has given me access not only to the book itself, but also to a host of Russian language texts on the internet that have enabled me to corroborate from independent sources a great many of the specifics the author saw fit to include in his narrative, names of individuals, institutions, scientific phenomena, etc., all of which turned out to be genuine, thereby contributing an additional measure of credence to what otherwise might seem utterly fantastic. Much of the corroborative information so gleaned, I have attempted to pass on to the English-speaking reader in the footnotes with the help of additional commentary by the editor. And yet there is a significant area in the author's description where authenticity must still be judged by the individual reader, which to me is one of the hallmarks of a work of literature, in contrast to a merely academic or journalistic report. Thirdly, the book penetrates one's thinking and feelings with the gentle force of a divinely inspired treatise. A treatise on not only the meaning of human life, but much more. Anastasia offers a tremendous new insight into the whole interrelationship of God, man, nature, and the universe. I would even go so far as to call it a revelation in science and religion. One nutshell description that comes to mind is a chronicle of ideas. Ideas on A, the history of humanity's relationship to everything outside of itself. B, the clouds, not only dark and foreboding, but even the fluffy and attractive variety of mistaken belief that have over the years hid this relationship from our sight and comprehension. And C, where to begin once we have caught a glimpse of this relationship, the necessary journey to reclaiming the whole picture. Deeply metaphysical in essence, the chronicle is set forth with both the supporting evidence of a documentary account and the entertainment capacity of a novel. In other words, it can be read as any of these three in isolation, but only by taking the three dimensions together will the reader have something approaching a complete picture of the book. And all three are infused with a degree of soul-felt inspiration that can only be expressed in poetry. Indeed, one must not overlook the poetry. As a matter of fact, I learned right at the start that experience in poetic translation was one of the qualifications required of a Ringing Cedars series translator, and not just on account of the 7 sample poems by readers at the end of chapter 30. There are footnotes. I'm not going to read them today because there's so many of them. But if you're super curious, let me know. Much of the book's prose, especially when Anastasia is speaking, exudes a poetic feel with rhyme and meter running a background course through whole paragraphs at a time. Hence, a particular challenge lay in reproducing this poetic quality along with the semantic meaning in English translation. Such poetic prose is even more evident in subsequent books in the series. Another challenge has been to match as closely as possible Vladimir Magre's progressive development as a writer. According to his own admission, Magre began his whole literary project not as a professional writer, but as a hardened entrepreneur for whom writing was the farthest activity from his mind. I smiled when one of the test readers of the translation, after finishing the first few chapters, described the author's style as choppy. Magre himself talks about the initial rejection notices he received from publisher after publisher, telling him his language was too stilted. And yet his rendering of some of Anastasia's pronouncements towards the end of Book 1 waxes quite lyrical indeed, especially in the poetic passages referred to above. The author's development in literary style, which he attributes to Anastasia's direct and indirect guidance, becomes even more pronounced as the series progresses. It will be up to the English-speaking reader to judge whether this transformation is also conveyed in the translation. There were 2 Russian words of frequent occurrence throughout the book that presented a particular translation challenge. One of them was dachniki, plural of dachnik, referring to people who own a dacha, or a country cottage, situated on just 600 square meters of land, obtainable free of charge from the Russian government. But there is little comparison here to most Western concepts of cottagers. While Russian dachas may be found in forested areas or simply on open farmland, one almost invariable feature is a plot, uchastok, on which are grown fruits and vegetables to supply the family not only for their dacha stays, but right through the year. Given that the word dacha is already known to many English speakers and is included in popular editions of both Oxford and Webster, it was decided to use the Russian word designating its occupants as well, with the English plural ending dachniks. The question that entailed the most serious difficulty, however, one that formed the subject of dozens of emails between editor and translator before it was finally resolved, was the rendering into English of the Russian word chelovek. It is the common term used to denote a human being of either gender, the equivalent of German Mensch, as well as of English man in the familiar Bible verse, God created man in his own image, Genesis 1:27. The problem with the term human, as in human being, is that it not only suggests a formation of the species from matter or earth, compare humus, the organic constituent of soil, but is associated with lowly concepts. From humus comes words like humble, humility, etc. Besides, the word human is essentially an adjective, not a noun, even though commonly used as a noun in today's English. On the other hand, Человек is derived from two Old Russian words indicating mind or thinking, chelo, lob, and eternity or time, vek. And interestingly enough, the English word man has a similar derivation, in this case from the Proto-Indo-European root men, signifying mind, thinking, or intelligence. Cf. our contemporary English word mental. It was not until approximately the 11th century CE that the word man in Germanic languages became narrowed in focus to denote primarily an adult male. By the late 13th century, it had all but squeezed out the earlier term for male, where Latin vir, echoed in modern words like virile. On the basis of Anastasia's sayings as presented by the author in the whole series, it may be seen that a constriction of overall human thought has been reflected in a narrowing of the meaning of man, which originally, like Russian Человек and German Mensch even today, designated all humanity, both men and women, as thinking, intelligent beings. At one point, realizing that some readers would take exception to the use of man on the grounds that, in today's usage at least, it seems to exclude half the total number of sentient thinking beings on the planet, we contemplated using the word Человек in transliteration for this purpose. However, we decided this alternative was outweighed by A, the feeling of exclusion many readers would experience at being described by a foreign word appearing so frequently throughout the book, almost one per page on average, and B, the opportunity to rediscover the original meaning of an English word whose usage has been constricted and corrupted over the past 10 centuries. It is interesting to note that from the 11th to 19th centuries in Russia, the word Человек itself suffered the same fate as the English word man, largely confined to designating male human beings, often male servants or slaves in particular. It was only in the 20th century that its original, universal sense made a comeback of sorts among the population at large to refer to, in most contexts at least, both men and women equally. This offers hope that in time, its English counterpart, man, may meet with a similar restoration of its original sense. Hence, it was decided to translate Человек, whether appropriate to the context, by the term man with a capital M, not only in an effort to retain the association of the term with a divine as opposed to a material earthly origin, but also to draw upon the original uncorrupted meaning of the word man as a manifestation of eternal mind, implied in the etymology of the Russian term Человек. So let all readers of this book be put on notice. Whenever you see man with a capital M, this includes you. There are other discrepancies between Russian and English concepts behind respective translation equivalents, but their explanation is best left to individual footnotes. In conclusion, I must express my gratitude to my editor, Leonid Sharashkin, first for entrusting me with the privileged task of translating such a monumental work as the Ringing Cedars series, and secondly, for the tremendous support he has given me throughout this initial project, namely in illuminating aspects of Vladimir Magre's and Anastasia's concepts of God, man, nature, and the universe that my previous experience with Russian literature could not possibly have prepared me for. These shared insights have made a significant difference in how particular nuances of the original are rendered in the translation. and especially in making allowances for the considerable geographical, social, and philosophical distances that all too often separate English-speaking readers from the vast cultural treasures accessible to those with knowledge of Russian. I now invite you all to take your seats in the familiar exploration vehicle known as the English language as we journey together to examine a previously inaccessible Russian treasure of momentous significance for all humanity, including the planet we collectively inhabit. An experience summed up in one beautiful word: Anastasia. Ottawa, Canada, January 2005/October 2007, John Wordsworth. So I guess he was like updating when they did a reprint a couple years later. Yeah, John Wordsworth, good man. Good, I think he's good papa, good gardener, as you would imagine. Okay, so next time I'm going to get into chapter 1, the ringing cedar. So if you're just begging and dying to know what the heck I'm talking about, we'll get into that next time. Yeah, cool. I actually just, man, am I gonna do teal? What a weird combination, but yes, I'm gonna do the frequency tarot from Teal Swan. It's not a complete deck even. I'm missing some cards from it. Spirit, can I please get a frequency artwork for the collective that has showed up here today for this Image I Nation introduction for this Ringing Cedars of Russia reading? Integrity. Wow. Okay. Oh, guidebook. 25. 2 plus 5 is 7. It's Chariot vibes. It's also God, Spirit, Universe, 7th chakra. Integrity. If you have drawn this card upright, make the choice to honor your personal truth. Integrity makes you feel whole and unimpaired. Sacrificing your moral and ethical principles or doing what does not feel good is a form of self-betrayal. Do not run from accountability. Brutal honesty with yourself is important at this time. Do not compromise yourself in any way. Now is the time to be there for yourself completely and live by what you know is right for you. I think that that's a really, really good place to end on, because Anastasia herself, although people will often associate her with magic or Christianity or all kinds of things, she is the least dogmatic character and archetype I've ever encountered in any story. And she highly encourages every man to connect with their own soul and navigate their lives, navigate their decisions, tap into their conscience, into their ray, as we'll get into, and to never take her word for anything, to always understand that the experience of human consciousness and that kind of higher intelligence that comes from God, that is not something that you receive through some sort of intermediary. It is the living word of God that you experience through your everyday life, through your body, through nature, through your community and your experiences, your relationships, and everything that connects in with and interacts with your mind. And that is what co-creates the world. And so she really is one of those people, I think, that believes that God lives within your own heart. And though priests and healers and conduits can be helpful and useful in some ways and sometimes, that ultimately at the end of the day our relationship with God is internal, and it's something that we only can and only should know for ourselves, through ourselves. So integrity, listen with an open mind and an open heart, and take the experience for whatever it is for you and however it interacts with you. I know for me that my relationship to the concepts within the Ring Cedars of Russia series has definitely evolved and grown over time. I am quite of the opinion that the matrix and the humus and the soil and the earthly realm is very important in all of this. But that's from my perspective and from my dharma and my path. And so just because that's true for me doesn't mean that that's true. It just means that that's what I need to be doing and I need to be focusing on. So allow whatever comes through your body and your mind and the experience you have when you're listening to these stories, and just tap into that and trust that this is an internal experience, gnosis, if you'd like. 31:31 on the clock. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you all next time.